welcome back again to my YouTube channel. So in this video we are trying to discuss the history previous year questions from 2023 examination of enforcement officer. So we know that in 2023 UPSC had conducted enforcement officer examination, and in that history was one of the subject. So we see the analysis of that question paper, we get to know that there were total 10 questions from history which were asked in that year. So in this video we are going to see those 10 questions along with the answer explanations, and we'll try to see the sources of those questions basically. Now remember one thing, considering history as such as a subject, it has very poor cost to benefit ratio. No matter how much you read from, there are always going to be some questions which will be unsolvable in the actual examination. So it is better to leave those kind of questions. So let us quickly start with the video. Now you can see the first question here. Which one of the following was not provided in the Regulating Act of 1773? So they have asked the acts here, Regulating Act of 1773, and what was not provided in that act. We have to select the correct statement here. So it made the presidency of Bengal supreme over those of Bombay and Madras in matters relating to war and peace. Yes, so this statement is true. The tenure of Governor General and his councillors was fixed as 5 years. Yes, even this statement is true. The Supreme Court of Justice was established at Calcutta. So even this is true. The Governor General in Council was authorized to appoint successors to Bombay and Madras presidencies. Now there was no such provision in the Regulating Act of 1773. Now, if you try to ask me from where they have lifted these statements, so they have lifted this statement from Sonali Bansal book of Modern India, because if you see the Lakshmikant or Spectrum and you go through this topic of Regulating Act of 1773, you will not find these B and C statements there. Or at most you can find Supreme Court regarding something in those books, but regarding the tenure of Governor General and his councillors, it is not given there. So it so these statements are lifted from Sonali Bansal book of Modern India, and verbatim it is given in those books. So the first statement here, it says accordingly Bengal presidency was made supreme with exclusive powers to deal with matters of war and peace. So that is what they have given in first statement, and other presidencies were made subordinate to it. Second statement says the council was to take all decisions by majority, though the governor general had the casting vote. In case of equality of votes, the council was given a term of 5 years and three members formed a quorum, that is majority. So here it is given that council, governor general council and his councillors were given a fixed tenure of 5 years. And finally, the act addressed by providing for a Supreme Court of Justice at Kolkata, which was established in 1774, and its jurisdiction included civil, criminal, admiralty, and ecclesiastical matters. So even this statement is given in this Sonali Bansal book. So here the correct answer is D. So there was no such provision to appoint successors to Bombay and Madras presidencies. Moving on, now we had another question from an act. Which one of the following statements about Government of India Act of 1935 is not correct? Again, we have to find here the incorrect statement. The three statements will be correct and one statement will be incorrect here. So first statement says it was an outcome of round table conferences. Yes, it is true that the Government of India Act was drafted or formulated after the three roundtable conferences were held. It provided for the establishment of an all India federation. Yes, we are aware of this, but we know that this never came into being. Then it retained the authority of Secretary of State over Government of India. Now this is false here. So this C is the correct answer here, that it is not correct regarding Government of India Act of 1935. And it introduced the provision of provincial autonomy. Yes, even this is true. Now if you see the spectrum or Lakshmikant, you will find one or two statements there. Like these screenshots I have taken from Lakshmikant book. So here you can find the few statements. It provided for the establishment of an all India federation consisting of provinces. So yes, B statement is true. It abolished diarchy in provinces and introduced provincial autonomy in its place. So even the D statement is true, that it introduced the provision of provincial autonomy. The provinces were allowed to act as a autonomous units of administration. And finally, if you see the third statement, it abolished the Council of India. It abolished the Council of India established by Government of India Act of 1858. The Secretary of State for India was provided with a team of advisors. So now the Secretary of State was no longer he or she no longer retained the authority which was provided to him or her by Government of India Act of 1858. So C is correct here. Now if you see the statement regarding first, that is round table conferences, it is not given in Lakshmikant or in spectrum, but by broad understanding you will be knowing that after three roundtable conferences were concluded and we had put forward our demands to the British, these Britishers come up with Government of India Act of 1935. So upon searching in Sonali Bansal book, I found this uh, paragraph here. The principal sources of Act, that is Government of India Act of 1935, included following. The first says Simon Commission report. Second, report of all parties, conference, Nehru report. Third, the discussions at three roundtable conferences. So here it is given. Then the white paper, joint select committee report, and the Lothian report, which determined the electoral provisions of the act. So these all became the sources of the Government of India Act of 1935. Moving on, we have the list 1 and list 2 here. List 1 says Congress session, list 2 says the president. Now, here the Congress sessions are given: Lahore session of 1909, Calcutta session 1911, Bankipur session 1912, Madras session 1914, and we have to match the following with its president. Now this is given in our spectrum book of modern India, but it is very trivial or factual data and it is very difficult to remember in actual examination. Even if you have read it once, you might get confused in actual examination. So in 1909 Lahore session, Madan Mohan Malviya was the president, so A is one here. Then in 1911 Calcutta session, Bishan Narayan Dar where was its president. So Calcutta session 3 is here, Vishan Narayandar. In 1912 Bankipur session, R.N. Mudholkar, that is Raghunath Narasimha Mudholkar, was the president. So C is 2 here. And 1914 Madras session, Bhupendra Nath Bose or Basu was the president. So D is 4. So A is 1, B is 3, C is 2 and D is 4. So A is the correct answer here. So from this we get to know that we have to prepare or at least we should be aware of the important Congress sessions, what happened in those sessions and who were presiding those sessions. Moving on, who among the following started the Bhonsla Military School at Nashik? Now remember, this is completely factual or trivial question. This is not mentioned in routine sources. You will not find this in Spectrum or any other routine book which is used for UPSC preparation. It is completely a factual GK kind of question. So in examination, if you are aware that who has started that Bonsla military school, it is well and good. But if you are not aware of anything, it is simply better to skip such kind of questions. So upon searching on Google, it was found that this Bonsla Military School in Nashik was founded by Dr. Balkrishna Shivramji Munje, that is Dr. B.S. Munje. So D is the correct answer here in 1937. So he established the Central Hindu Military Education Society at Nashik in 1935 and the school was officially opened on June 12, 1937. So Dr. Munje was strong advocate for Indianizing the armed forces and believed in importance of military training for Indian youth. So because of this aim and objective, Dr. B.S. Munje has started the Monsla Military School at Nashik. Moving on, let us see the next question. Arrange the following events associated with Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya in chronological order, starting with the earliest. Now, again, few things you will find in spectrum, but the few things will not find anywhere. It is completely in-depth question. If you have read it, only then you will be able to solve. So founding of Banaras Hindu University, so it is in 1916. So it is given in spectrum that Annie Besant had come to India in 1893. She led the foundation of Central Hindu College in Banaras in 1898, where both Hindu religion and Western scientific subjects were taught. The college became nucleus for formation of Banaras Hindu University in 1916. So this BHU was formed in 1916. Then formation of Congress Nationalist Party. So even this is given in spectrum. Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, who was an upholder of Gandhian policies since 1920s, began to drift away with the launch of Harijan campaign by Gandhi. He started a breakaway Congress Nationalist Party. So that is what is asked. So it happened in during 1920s. Congress Nationalist Party. Now these two we know from our routine sources. What about third statement? Founding of the English newspaper The Leader. Now this is given in spectrum but year is not given. You can see here the screenshot. The Leader in English, Madan Mohan Malviya. So it was founded by Madan Mohan Malviya but year is not given. And fourth statement says founding of Hindu boarding house at Allahabad. So even this is not given in spectrum book. But it was done in 1903 for the outstation candidates who come from poor and hardcore backgrounds so that they get the opportunities to study. So this Hindu boarding house at Allahabad was founded in 1903 and this English newspaper The Leader was founded in 1909. It was first published in 1909. So 4312 B is the correct answer here. Moving on, who among the following was a companion of freedom fighter Rani Chennamma of Kittur and continued the fight against British after Rani's capture by British in 1824? Now this is given in class 8 NCRT, class 8 NCRT book, and it says that for example when British tried to annex the small state of Kittur in Karnataka today, Rani Chennamma took to arms and led an anti-British resistance movement. She was arrested in 1824, so it is given here, and died in prison in 1829. But Rayanna, a poor chowkidar of Sangoli in Kittur, carried on the resistance. So Rayanna is the correct answer here. So we have to go through the NCRTs. Time and again I am telling you to read history NCRTs. Next, the first Indian Factories Act passed in 1881 dealt primarily with. So it is given in spectrum that the first Factories Act of 1881 dealt primarily with the problem of child labor between 7 and 12 years of age. So C is the correct answer here, that it talked about the child labor. Where was Azad Hind Fauj, Indian National Army, formed? So this is the next question. Azad Hind Fauj, where was it formed? The place is what they are asking. So when the Indian National Army was founded by Mohan Singh in Singapore. So Singapore is the correct answer here. Raspberry Bose was greatly excited and the INA headquarters was shifted to Rangoon in Burma in January 1944. So remember Rangoon, later this headquarters was shifted to Rangoon, but formation of INA took place in Singapore by Mohan Singh. So Singapore is the correct answer here. Again this screenshot is taken from Spectrum book. Next, moving on, let us see the other questions. In 1927, Lord Birkenhead, Secretary of State for India, appointed a committee of 3 members to inquire into relationship between Indian states and British government and to make suggestions for more satisfactory adjustment. So it is not a member of that committee. Now the spectrum, it only says Butler committee, so we know that Butler has to be one of the member of that committee. So the question of extent of sovereignty and paramountcy was still undefined. The Butler Committee of 1927 was set up to examine the nature of relationship between princely states and the government, and thus that committee gives some recommendations. And again, in spectrum, we find this appointment of Harcourt Butler Indian States Commission. This Butler Committee was also called as Indian States Commission, which was formed in 1927. So we know that Harcourt Butler was the chairman of that committee, but it doesn't talk now. In GK today, I found this who were the members. So the Harcourt Butler Committee, also known as Indian States Committee, was a three-member committee appointed by British government in 1927. And this committee was to investigate and clarify the relationship between paramount power of British Raj in India and rulers of princely states. The committee chaired by Sir Harcourt Butler and also consisting of William Searle Holdsworth and Sidney Peel visited 16 states and submitted its report in 1929. So William Holdsworth and members of this committee, not the member of this committee. So as it is a difficult question to act. So B is the correct answer here. Moving on, the final question, which of the following statements are correct? First says, under the Cornwallis system, the districts were divided into thanas or police jurisdictions of 20-30 miles square. Yes, this statement is correct. Even you will find this statement in spectrum as well. We know that Cornwallis brought major reforms in policing. So one of the reforms was that he divided the district into various thanas or police jurisdictions, which we see it even today itself, today also. Each of even this state is true, and you will find, maybe you will find this in spectrum, but you will find this in class 8th NCRT as well. uh, I will show you the screenshot just now. The Daroga system was introduced in Madras in 1812. Now this is a very difficult. If you have read this only, you will be able to attempt, but this statement is false here. The Daroga was nominated by district magistrate, that is DM. So even this is not given in routine sources. So 3 is incorrect here. So the correct answer here is 1, 2, and 4. That is D. So if we see the class 8th NCRT, it says that Lord Cornwallis brought changes to existing police system to bring law and order under control. So he replaced British magistrates in the place of Faujdars, and Zamindars were left as such. So he also introduced a regular force of police in 1791. He stripped Zamindars of their power, and the first statement says, and placed it under Darogas. That is what the second statement says, who British magistrates appointed. Now even the fourth statement here, it says that the British magistrates appointed those Daroga or nominated the Daroga system, which was extended to Madras in 1802. So this Daroga system was introduced in Madras in 1802 and not in 1812. But it was later abolished in 1812 after placing police forces under the control of district, which became the ultimate controller of police forces. So you can see here it was introduced in 1802. So these are the 10 questions which were asked in enforcement officer of 2023 question paper. As you can see, most of the questions can be solved from the NCRT and spectrum books, but there will always be few questions which will be unsolvable in actual examination. Considering your level of study, try to give the appropriate time, but don't just blindly follow or read every book for history, because as I said in the beginning as well, the cost benefit ratio is very poor for history. Thank you for watching my video. In next video I will come up with the history PYQs of APFC examination. Thank you once again.